My name is Robert A. Durr III. My last name is spelled D-E-R.
Thank you.
Mr. Durr, how are you employed?
I'm a crime scene investigator with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
In this particular case, or do you recognize those?
Yes, sir.
And what are they?
They're the projectiles that I recovered.
All right, and so when you were at the scene in this particular case, you took photos
Yes, sir.
and you collected those projectiles?
Yes, sir.
Were you present when those projectiles were removed from the body?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you observed them take them out?
Yes, sir.
And so then do you photograph and document them being taken out?
Yes, sir.
And then you collect them yourself?
Yes, sir.
All right. Also recover some fragments from inside Jermaine Bass's body.
Yes, sir.
So they're very small, correct?
Yes, sir.
And these are in fact what is taken out of the body, and they've been described as fragments of a projectile. What would that be? What are fragments?
So fragments could be anything that separated off of a projectile. It could be where it was damaged or anything, maybe split apart as it was entering.
Okay, so this is most likely from the same projectile that came into the body?
I couldn't be specific on that, but
Okay.
Morning. It's Cheyenne Miley. It was Wheaton during it's an investigation. I apologize. It's Shyanne. Last name Miley, Miley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please tell the jury where you work.
I work for Hillsborough. Sorry, can you hear me? I work for Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office as a detective with our homicide section.
It's 29th of 2022.
The lead detective, Detective Gabo, asked me to pick up some additional video surveillance from a residence near the incident scene.
What residence did you go to?
It was off Heritage Club Drive. The numerical, I believe, was 13937. And ensure that the date and time stamp on the video surveillance is in fact correct.
So when you went to this residence in Heritage Grove Apartments and you looked at the video surveillance at the timestamp, compared it to your phone, what did you find out?
I saw that the date was accurate, but the time was about 1 minute behind real time.
Spell your name for us.
Yes, ma'am. The name is Clay Hobelman. First name is Clay, C-L-E-Y. Last name is Hobelman, H-O-B-E-L-M-A-N-N.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Tell the jury where you work.
I work with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long? After you received information about what the other deputies saw or heard when they first arrived, what did you decide to do next?
For this investigation, I collected information from the deputies that were there at the scene and used some of that information as well as some observations we were able to make just from the outside of the residence to complete a search warrant for that residence.
So in this investigation, you obtained a search warrant. Did you search the entirety of the townhome involved in this case?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
So after that, did you begin documenting the scene?
Yes, ma'am. Within entering the residence, the door opens inward and we come into a foyer area that has a kitchen just off to the side of it. Beyond that, there's a dining room area, and then a little further beyond that, there's a TV room area or an entertainment room, I guess, or living room space. On that location or at that location is a black couch, and we noted what we believed was going to be some blood on the edge of that couch or the side cushion of that couch, as well as a small metal item that looks like a clasp or a toothed clasp that, just based on my familiarity with them, looks like the kind of clasp that's used to secure an elastic bandage or an ace bandage.
Bunk in 22R, are we looking at the bunk?
This would be the top bunk, ma'am.
Okay, we're looking at the back of the photo. You can see a sticker that is on the wall right about the middle that I'm pointing to right here. It's a yellow sticker labeled Damage A. We see another sticker labeled Damage B. And we see another green sticker which we see labeled red substance that we're pointing to where Damage A sticker is labeled on. What is on the other side of this wall?
The other side of that wall is going to be a bathroom. So the darkened margin on the right side of your photograph as you're looking at it is going to be the darkened space just because of the lighting at that time of the children's bedroom or of the kids' bedroom, where that same bunk bed we just saw in the previous photograph would be located.
Pointing to the yellow marker on A1 to the right. It's labeled Damage A1. Is that the same wall, the back side of the wall, belonging to Damage A?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it your testimony from what you saw? It goes through the wall, and exits in damage A1 that we're seeing on 22AA on the right over here.
Yes, ma'am, that is our belief. There is a space in just the normal construction space between those two walls. But yes, it would appear, based on some other continued observations that we make once we get to A2 and A3, that that's going to be one continuous trajectory of a projectile going through the wall.
Describe for the record what we're looking at in damage A1, specifically around the shape that you notice.
So this would be what we believe is the corresponding exit from the A damage, or the initial A damage, and you'll see where the paint is kind of chipped as that force is pushing that out, and we'll start pushing portions of the wall out with it as the bullet comes out of the wall or would be exiting from the wall.
Our bathroom that we've been talking about, that is right next to the children's room, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this shower curtain also depicted in, or part of the shower that's in 22Z that we've been using for reference? If you were to walk in to the left, would you immediately see what we're looking at in 22Z, the shower curtain?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. Packing the tile of the shower and then embedding itself in the tile or the substrate that is below the tile. And that's what we're seeing kind of centered in that damage there, is the backside of the projectile. Collected items are going to have some measurement to them. You'll see many of these stickers that are being photographed have a scale or have a measurement already on the sticker that helps us understand if it's next to something, what the size is that we're dealing with. If it's something that we find of specific importance that we're collecting, we may do additional measurements of it once we get back to crime scene and have a more controlled environment. But generally speaking, several of our areas that are photographed will have some sort of scale to them. It's not necessarily to give you a specific measurement as to the width or the diameter of the bullets, but it is giving you some context as to how big this portion of damage is on the wall.
Once I've placed 22R in the Elmo, I'm pointing to the left portion. There's only one green sticker on the wall, and I'm pointing to it right now. Is that the same sticker that I'm pointing to in 22R that is apparent in 22JJ that we see to the left of the measuring marker?
Yes, ma'am, that would be the same sticker.
Okay. Based on your training and experience, the fact that you were at the scene, I'm placing 22RRR on the Elmo. And it's fuzzy. Let's give it just a second. In 22RRR, we see damage A that we've referred to before. Knowing that the topmost portion that I'm pointing to on the left side is 5 feet and 5 inches. Can you confirm, because you were there, damage A is at least 5 feet 5 inches or higher?
Yes, ma'am, that would be accurate. Wall, so opposite or the adjoining wall from the bedroom. And this is a measurement of that what we believe to be the corresponding damage of A1.
The corresponding same green pole, 22LLL, is it the same green trajectory pole?
Yes, ma'am, same rod. We're dealing with a slightly downward angle, and that angle, for the purpose of this photograph, would be from a left to right
I'm going
angle.
to object again to this witness outside his knowledge and expertise.
Overruled.
You can answer it.
But it was essentially answered. It's a downward angle and slightly left to right as it's seen in this photograph.
The marker on the wall, is that damage A1?
Yes, ma'am, on the right side wall, in the photograph just above the shower towel holder.
On the shower curtain, is that damage A2?
Yes, ma'am.
And we can kind of see, it looks like there's, over here, there's a cabinet on the wall, but sneaking out right behind the cabinet, it looks like we have another yellow marker that goes into the shower tile. Is that damage A3?
Yes, ma'am.
Explain to the jury the purpose of using the trajectory rod from damage A1 in the bathroom wall to A2 in the shower curtain to A3 in the shower tile.
to again show the path of the projectile as it went through the bathroom, or the likely path of the projectile as it's penetrating through the wall, going through the shower curtain, and then embedding in the tile. So this is a fairly accurate representation of what that path would have looked like.
You just used the word "the path" a few times. What is the path?
The path of the bullet or the projectile as it's going through the wall and then ending up in the other wall.
And what is the path? It's at a what angle?
The path and trajectory is at a downward angle in this instance.
Is this the same hole that we see in 22 RRR depicted right above damage A?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Now, based on your training and your experience and your evaluation of the trajectory rod used in this investigation, what occurred from damage A to damage A1 to damage A2 and to damage A3?
I think this has been asked and answered, Judge.
Sustained.
And then, what's significant about this damage, specifically when you zoom in?
We believed, again, this is just a zoomed in or a closer up photograph of one of the preceding photographs of the same damage at damage B. We're seeing some blood in that same area, as well as some breaking of the wood on that framework. And towards the right, I would say the right edge of that damage, there's a little bit of rounded shape to that damage that we thought might be consistent with a bullet or a projectile striking that area. Along or the same area, there's a splitting of kind of the foam in the mattress here, and that's part of where the blood was also, there's a little bit of blood that came through the mattress in that same location.
Tell the jury what you noticed.
A projectile was located within this space where the springs were. That would be the actual recovered bullet or projectile, just held in a palm.
The recovered bullet or projectile that we're looking at in this photo, is it the same as the projectile that's depicted and that we just pointed out in 22FFF?
Yes, ma'am.
Thermo 22CCC, what are we looking at here?
Some poorly done demolition, and then that's going to be a projectile that was recovered from the wall. We can readily identify as a continuation of droplets, and we made swab at the first point, the last point, and one or two spots in between. So we don't always swab every single spot that we are seeing at a scene, and we don't always swab every single puddle that we see at a scene or pooling area that we see at a scene. But generally, we're swabbing or looking for areas that we think are of specific interest for the investigation.
During this investigation, you explained to us before that you work closely with the lead investigator and other detectives in the case. Does that include finding out whether or not any of the victims who were transported to the hospital or to the medical examiner's office had projectiles or fragments contained within their bodies?
We would eventually become aware of that. I don't know if we were aware of that at the time that we were working our scene.
How many other projectiles were recovered?
There was one other projectile recovered from autopsy,
From whose body?
from Jermaine Bass's body.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Detective?
That's fine.
A lot of your training for crime scene documentation is on the job, correct?
Correct.
You've done some outside presentations, but mainly you've received quite training during your years documenting scenes.
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to ask you first, you did in fact attend the autopsy, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You attended it with, I believe, CSI Durham?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, there had been some question, had there not, concerning Jayla Bass's hands being bagged. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there was a question as to whether her hands had been bagged prior to coming to the medical examiner's office. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And the medical examiner's office, based on that, contacted you, advised you it had not been done per your agency, and asked you if you wish to have any special processing done on Jayla's hands.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
All right. And you indicated to the medical examiner's office there was no special processing requested and no plans to swab her hands, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when a witness gets their hands bagged, that's typically done at the scene?
I think if we're talking about bagged hands, we're usually talking about deceased, but yes, I don't know that we bag witnesses.
Did I say witnesses?
If we bag witnesses, we might be pissing people off, but yes, deceased, that's typically done at the scene if we're going to do it, yes.
I apologize, I misspoke and
that's
said
okay.
witnesses. So in this case, Jayla Bass's hands were bagged at the scene.
They were not bagged at the scene, no.
Hospital?
I believe at hospital, yes.
Okay. So when she arrives for the autopsy, her hands have been bagged.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And that bagging is to protect and preserve any evidence that might be on a person's hand, under their fingernails.
Yes, it can, correct.
Now, you don't have any contact with any civilians in this case, Mr. Bass, Mrs. Bass.
That's correct.
Now, casings, since you've talked about firearms and casings, you've indicated typically casings in a normal type firearm, semi-automatic that we're talking about, typically they eject to the right.
Correct.
In this specific case, with the Glock 42 that we have, that's .380 caliber, do you know what side the port is on?
I believe it's on the right side, ma'am.
Okay. And the port's going to be the area in which that casing ejects from.
Yes, it's the opening to allow that casing to eject.
Now, casings are fluid. They can be moved around, they can bounce, they can be kicked around, they can fall in different places, correct?
That's correct, yes.
When we spoke to you, you processed this scene on August 29th into August 30th of 2022, correct?
Yes, August 30th, correct.
Okay. And you had no idea that responding deputies had moved blankets from around the area of Jayla more towards the eastern side in order to retrieve Jayla. You didn't know about that till we told you in deposition.
That's correct, ma'am.
Right. So you didn't know that at all. We advised you, let me know if this sounds accurate, about a year and 2 months later, October 17th of 2023.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
At that point, when you spoke with us and we gave you that information, had you watched any of the body cams of responders?
No, I don't believe I had, ma'am.
Have you to this day, in the time you've had, been able to watch any of the body cams?
Yes, we've reviewed body cameras, ma'am.
Into the hole that was behind the bunk bed, which is labeled B1.
That's correct.
And then you thought that that same hole or that same travel went to B2, which was in the bathroom and dug out of the drywall.
I think by the time we established B1 and B2 and rotted it, we realized it's pretty clearly not going to be the same as damage B. So I don't know if we ever got to assuming B2 might be an extension of that.
Okay. Was that area swabbed above damage B?
I don't believe it was.
Was any sort of phenolphthalein testing done to determine that any item you saw of red substance above damage B was in fact blood?
No, I don't. If it wasn't swabbed, then I don't believe there would have been any pheno testing for it.
Okay. That something hit damage B and then went into the mattress, but you can't tell the jury that's what happened.
Definitively, no. Correct.
And that is located somewhere in pretty close proximity to the bunk bed. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was anything else collected out of that closet?
Just some of the materials that were in that bag.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Let me ask you first, 380 live rounds that could have then been fired in a firearm. Were there any 380 live rounds found anywhere in the home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where were they found?
In the children's bedroom.
marked by red substance A. Do you recognize that? And is that what we're speaking of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that is in close proximity to where the couch is downstairs.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And are you aware, in fact, that that is the couch that Mr. Bass sat holding his son, JJ?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Weinstein, DANIELLE, WEINSTEIN.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. Ms. Weinstein, where are you employed?
I'm employed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or FDLE.
Now, when did you first become involved in the Jermaine Bass case?
I first received evidence back in the beginning of 2022, I believe. Or 2023.
If you need to look at your report
Sorry, yeah.
to refresh your recollection, you can.
The first submission that I received was 10/19/2022.
Okay, so October 19th of 2022 is when you first received a submission.
Yes.
All right. What item in that submission in October of 2022 were you given to analyze?
I was given 4 different items. There were swabs from a magazine base, swabs from the grip and trigger, and swabs from the slide and sights. These are all from a Glock 42 firearm. And then there were also buckle swabs from Jermaine Bass Jr. Yes, they are.
All right. Now, were you able to develop a profile for comparison from the buckle swabs of Jermaine Bass Jr.?
Yes, I was.
All right. Did you then attempt to make a comparison with the other swabs that you received in this initial submission, which was the first submission you received, correct?
Yes, so I obtained a complete DNA profile from the buckle swabs from Jermaine Bass. So that means there was DNA at all of the 21 areas I was looking at. And then I went on to look at the swabs from the magazine base and the other swabs from the grip and trigger and the slide and sights. And I determined
Well, before you, I'll go through each one individually. Why don't we do that to make it a little easier? So, did you compare the known swab or the known DNA of Jermaine Bass Jr. with the swabs from the magazine base of the Glock 42 firearm?
Yes, I did. So prior to my comparison, I will look at the overall DNA profile that I get from the magazine base, and I'll determine a conclusion about it. So what I first determined was that the DNA results I obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with 2 donors, including at least 1 male contributor. So then with that mixture, I then compared Jermaine Bass Jr., and he was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile.
Okay, so he was included, but were you able to make a statistical determination of the likelihood that his DNA was included in that?
So the statistic that I calculated was that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and 1 unrelated individual than from 2 unrelated individuals.
And what did you determine from the swab from the grip and trigger?
For the swabs from the grip and trigger, the DNA results obtained demonstrated the presence of a mixture consistent with 2 donors, including at least 1 male contributor. And then I did my comparison, just like any other sample, where Jermaine Bass Jr. was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. Yes, I did.
And what did you receive?
In the next submission, I received buckle swabs from Shirley Bass. So I ran the swab through the DNA analysis process, and I obtained a complete DNA profile from those known buckle swabs.
So you obtained from this buckle swab a complete DNA profile of Shirley Bass?
Correct.
Okay. And what did you do with that profile?
So then I compared the profile to the swabs from the magazine base and the swabs from the grip and trigger, those mixtures that I had before.
And were you able to include Shirley Bass as a possible contributor for either one of those areas?
No, I was not.
Okay. So you did not locate the DNA of Shirley Bass on either the grip or the trigger, as well as or the base of the magazine.
For,
Objection, that's misleading, Judge.
Ask the question again.
Yeah, please.
You were not able to determine or find DNA belonging to Shirley Bass to include her on either one of those submissions.
specifically for the swabs from the magazine base, when I compared the DNA profile from Shirley Bass to that mixture, there was not enough support for inclusion or exclusion. So no determination could be made to that item. So essentially there were some DNA types of hers present, but the calculation was very low. It gave a very low statistic, which is not very descriptive. It cannot tell me whether or not her DNA may or may not be present in the sample, so I cannot include or exclude her. And then as far as the swabs from the grip and trigger, Shirley Bass was excluded as a contributor, so her DNA types were not present in that mixed DNA profile.
Okay. So she was specifically excluded from the grip and trigger, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And what was that submission?
I received a blood stain card that was represented as being from Jayla Bass.
All right. And were you able to obtain a DNA profile from that submission of Jayla Bass?
Yes, I obtained a complete DNA profile.
All right. And what did you do with that complete DNA profile that you obtained of Jayla Bass?
So I then compared it to those previous mixtures that I had from the evidence.
All right. And what were your results?
For the magazine base, Jayla Bass, or yes, Jayla was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. And the statistic I calculated to that was that the observed mixed DNA profile is approximately 25,000 times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jayla Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
Okay, so 25,000 versus 700 billion, that's a big difference in the statistical probability, correct?
Yeah, so it's still an inclusion, it's still a higher statistic, but it's not quite to the level of greater than 700 billion.
Okay. What about the grip and trigger? Were you able to obtain, or were you able to make a comparison in that particular case?
Yeah, so for the swabs from the grip and trigger, Jayla Bass was excluded as a contributor to the mixed DNA profile.
So her DNA was, you were not able to find her DNA at all on the grip or trigger?
Her DNA types were not present.
Okay. And were you able to make any comparisons with that known profile?
Yes, I did. I compared it to those previous mixtures.
And what did you find?
For the swabs from the magazine base, Jermaine Bass was included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. And the statistic I calculated was that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish.
And then also compared to the swabs from the grip and trigger, for that one, Jermaine Bass was also included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. The statistic sounds the same. The observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass and one unrelated individual than from two unrelated individuals.
So in this particular case, and I'm going to go through, so you have on the grip and trigger two potential contributors, and you've now identified both the father and the son as potential or possible inclusion in those two as the two donors, correct?
For the grip and trigger, I have included both the father and son, yes.
Right. And on the base of the magazine, you indicated two donors, but in this particular case, you've indicated now to the jury that there was the father, the son, and potentially the daughter as well. So that's three donors, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
This-
Which doesn't totally make sense for a mixture of two donors to have three people included to it. But the reasoning for this is because they're all related biologically. So I did go back and do further figuring out who may be actually included.
And what did you determine? Explain that to the jury, what you determined.
Sure. So I had written another report, actually, that was just about doing more statistics to try to figure out who may be included. So I was able to compare combinations of two people. So again, like the reason for all three appearing to be included is because they're all related, they're all sharing DNA, right? A father is going to give half their DNA to the children. So it can look like somebody, when compared individually, is present because their DNA types are present. But in comparing them in combinations of two instead, I'm able to figure out who may be in the profile. So essentially, I did combinations of comparing both Jermaine Bass Jr. and Jayla Bass, and comparison of comparing Jermaine Bass the son and Jayla Bass. And for both of those, when looking at the profiles taken together, and I also calculated statistics to it as well, both of them were not possible to occur together. So the father-daughter together and the two siblings together could not occur together. So when compared together, they were excluded. And then so basically what I was trying to determine is what's the best explanation for this data. So this mixture is best explained if the father, Jermaine Bass Jr., and the son, Jermaine Bass, are included together. So that statistic that I calculated to that inclusion is that the observed mixed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if the sample originated from Jermaine Bass Jr. and Jermaine Bass than if it originated from two unrelated individuals. Yes, for this complete DNA profile from the Mandalorian Comforter, this DNA profile matches the DNA profile from Jermaine Bass, so that's the son. And the statistic that I calculated was that the observed DNA profile is greater than 700 billion times more likely to occur if a sample originated from Jermaine Bass than if it originated from an unrelated individual.
And was the son, Jermaine Bass, the sole contributor in this? Was there any, or were there any other donors that you located?
It was just a single source, meaning it came from one person. So Jermaine Bass was the one who matched to it. And what I compared to with Shirley Bass, there was no determination as far as her contribution of DNA to the magazine base. And then for the grip and trigger, she was excluded as a contributor.
Okay, now I know those are your results. What I'm asking you is, because somebody has been excluded from DNA, either from a single source profile or a mixture, that does not mean they didn't touch the item.
It doesn't necessarily mean they've never touched the item. I can only report what my DNA results show at this specific time. I can't tell you what may have occurred at any given time, prior or after, of course. And I cannot tell you how DNA gets there or when it gets there.
And you put, I was thinking I want to keep my original conclusion that it's a mixture of two and just report the inclusion of the son. Although with the information that they're all related, that could mean it should have been three. Even without indications of three, what do you think? And you're talking with your supervisor.
Correct.
You're also advising her that you had called it and run it as a mixture of two.
Yes.
All right. And after you spoke with your supervisor, a decision was made not to run it in Star Mix as a three-person mixture.
Yes, I decided that my original decision and conclusion that it was a mixture of two donors was accurate, even despite there being three people seeming to be included into the mixture.
And there is the capability in Star Mix to change the scenarios for the program. In other words, run it as a three-person mixture.
I could have run it as a 3-person mixture, but I did not choose to do that in this case because it was consistent with a 2-person mixture.
My name is Anna Cox, and it's spelled A-N-N-A, and Cox is spelled C-O-X.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Cox, what do you do for a living?
I own my own private forensic consulting and training business. So what I identified in that particular area is on the railing that faces inward toward the mattress, the west side, which would be the short side that the pillow's up against, that has impact spatter on it. The other area that was of interest was the actual corner where the two railings meet. That has impact spatter on it as well. Then you also have a little bit of impact spatter on the long railing at the corner, but you have the conical impact spatter that actually radiates upward from that corner, upward in that conical fashion onto the wall above the bed. So that indicated to me that understanding the location of the gunshot wounds, that there were 3 to the head of Jayla and 1 to the head of Jermaine and 1 to the hand of Jermaine, that those areas of their person, their heads and his hand, needed to be in that corner. And they also have to be relatively either on the mattress or on the pillow and on the mattress in order for the blood to have the target of the bed frame as well as the wall to have received the blood spatter. So that tells me that their heads are low, either immediately on or just right above the mattress of the frame. Blood follows the laws of physics. So blood is going to travel and attach itself to something until it either can no longer do so or it's already attached itself to something. So the fact that the blood on the west frame abruptly stopped indicated to me that that pillow, and that is also that was done sequentially, which is a very traditional type of crime scene documentation. You photograph things, then you move things, then you re-photograph things.
And let me ask you that, Ms. Cox, while we're on the subject of that, because you talk about a lot that you've done this before. You've been a crime scene investigator. You go out, you know how they're done. Do you swab every single piece of blood that you see anywhere at every crime scene?
No, it's very customary to take representative swabbings.
Okay.
Mattress on the other side. So what that tells me is that the bleeding that is occurring after the gunshot injuries is being confined to that particular area as the bloodletting injuries are being allowed to flow freely and flowing down over the mattress and onto the wall and the bed below. This became even more evident. Now we're looking at the north side of the mattress that was originally in contact with the frame against the wall. So this is once again further on in the documentation process where they have taken a downward photograph to identify the location of not only the dowel rod but also the relationship of it to the mattress. What's of interest to me is I'm starting to see what's called coagulation, which is where the blood is actually starting to become gelatinous and coagulate and start to adhere to itself, and it's forming almost like an outline. And the second slide was demonstrated to me what I had already started to believe was that is where Jermaine Bass's head was laying. And that was confirmed when I kept reviewing the body cam video. I was able to see in the body cam video the proximity of her head, and that is where her face and her head was lying while the blood was starting to coagulate around her and then drip down the north side of the mattress, and then it began to drip down the wall, the north wall.
And is this just more of a close-up shot of what you were just describing?
That's a close-up shot, which gives you more of an indication of not only can you see the blood that's coming down on the north side and the coagulation, but you can also see another saturation stain just above it, and you can see where that's going down the west side. So you basically have two areas where the blood is actually coming over down the side of the actual mattress. 305, the first slide on the left, you can actually see the flow pattern. It's a very delineated downward flow pattern. It's got the delineated perimeter lines, and it's just the blood following the laws of physics, just going down the wall based on gravity. The secondary photograph, identified as 307, that shows you not only do I have different surfaces, so I have a hard, like painted wood frame, which is a little bit smoother. I have the towel, which is an absorbent surface, which is going to react differently to the blood. Then I have the wooden slats that are part of the frame for the mattress that aren't necessarily as smooth as the actual gray frame. So those are three different surfaces that I have to take into consideration, and that explained to me why I have such a variety of the satellite stains and why some of them are in different locations than others. Because, and not only that, I have different levels. So the gray wooden frame is higher than the wooden slat frames, and then you have the towel, which is higher than the wooden frame, but then drooping down between the frames. So those are all variables that I have to consider.
Right. And the blood on the slats, would that blood have come all the way through the mattress, or would it have been still from the ones that were coming over the side?
It would be the ones coming over the side, and I actually considered that. And so what I did was I looked at the photographs where the mattress had been cut and one of the projectiles removed, because that is something that I had to consider, and so I was able to exclude that.
Okay, so it just came from the side and then just dripped down into there.
Correct.
Particular photo?
This is a photograph which is demonstrating the distance from the wall to the mattress that did not fit the frame. And it's also just giving a downward perspective of the stains and patterns in relationship to each other, showing the different elevations as well as the different locations of the blood on the different areas. The gunshot injuries occurred in the northwest corner, and then both children are laying in the northwest corner. And that is reflected, as you can see on the sketch. You can see the overall, all of the evidence together. So you can see P is the impact spatter on the top bunk, and R is the satellite staining on the bottom bunk, and they are both in the northwest corner. And those are the two areas that are the mixture. This is the area underneath where the comforter and the blankets were. And you can also see that there are transfers on the wall and on the bed frame. And that is indicative of that comforter was contaminated with enough wet blood that it caused the transfer stains and small saturation stains that end of the bed. So that is how I had formulated a hypothesis and then came to the conclusion that it's most consistent with those items being further west on the bed prior to coming to rest there.
Evidence.
That defect in projectile was in close enough proximity to possible biological material when those were deposited.
Okay. Now you can't say specifically what biological material.
No.
Okay, so it could be from his hand, that his hand was shot?
Correct. He did have a gaping wound to hit his right palm area by his pinky. Yes.
Or possibly his head?
Or possibly his head. His head was bandaged in all the documentation that I saw.
Okay.
The transfer stains continue over towards the ladder, and then they continue down the ladder. So you also have stains on the ladder itself. So that being consistent with possibly the son being removed from the bed, moving himself or being moved from the bed and down the railing. Now, I do want to make it clear that another person contaminated with the son's blood could have also deposited those blood stains while moving him. I can't exclude either one, so both of those are included.
Testified here today, those are your opinions and your conclusions, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you cannot tell this jury who pulled that trigger, correct?
I cannot.
All right. My question to you was, and I believe you've answered it, is you cannot give us an exact position of those children on that top bunk.
I can tell you that their heads were in proximity to the northwest corner because all the blood is on the northwest corner.
So
that is related to the gunshot wounds.
Okay. I'll ask you again. You cannot give us an exact position of where those children were. Correct?
I cannot give you the exact position. I can just tell you that where the blood is and where their heads would have been in order for the blood to have gotten in the northwest corner. They have to be in proximity to it.
Proximity, exactly. All right. Now, Jayla, there could have been some movement concerning Jayla, or possibly some movement prior to her coming to rest in the position that you saw her in the body cam, correct?
Very minimal amount of movement, if there was any.
Yeah, and you can't really tell us or help us with that. In fact, in the depot, you deferred us to the medical examiner in terms of Jayla's movement, correct?
Her capabilities of movement, not whether there was significant movement by her, but whether she could have moved on her own.
Right.
And there's no blood source in that area to cause the contamination that I see on the comforter, which would just once again indicate that the comforter was further west, came to rest on Jayla Bass's leg, caused the deposition on the wall, moved down to the east end, caused the deposition on the walls. So that's actually the progression that the blood is telling me. This that I've done. And there was not significant movement of Jayla Bass. So I can put Jayla Bass in that general area up there in the northwest corner. I have no indications that she moved. Plus, all the blood that's on her at the scene is on her head and her upper body, which is in nowhere near that.
I'll ask you the question again. You cannot tell us whose blood that is, correct?
I can tell you who's most likely based on my analysis, but I did not have that DNA tested. I am basing that on my analysis and conclusions and the dynamics of this scene that I've discussed thus far.
No.
I'm Dr. Noah Riley, Noahrilly.
Thank you. Doctor, how are you employed?
I'm an associate medical examiner for the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's Office.
When you made your initial examination of Jayla Bass, what were you able to visually observe about the body from your initial reviews and when you first saw her?
She was a 5-year-old child with gunshot wounds to the head.
All right, and it was very clear to you that there were gunshot wounds to her head?
Yes.
And in the course of conducting autopsies, I'm assuming you conducted many autopsies with gunshot wounds?
Yes.
All right. How many gunshot wounds were you able to visually observe when you first were doing the initial observation of her body?
She has 3 gunshot wounds.
Okay. Where were these gunshot wounds located?
One gunshot wound was on the left side of her head. One was just above and in between the eyebrows, and another was just beneath her left eye.
Okay, let me go back to 23B. Was there any evidence that this was a close range shot?
No. Just above and in front of the left ear. It then perforates the skull and enters the cranium. It perforates the brain, perforates the skull again, and then exits out the back of her head on the left side.
Now, you can't say what the positioning of her head was when she received this wound. You can just describe that was the path of travel of the wound in relation to her head.
Correct. I can only tell you the direction of the track that the bullet made through the body. I cannot tell you the position of the shooter or the position of, the child.
Describe this wound to the jury.
So this is a entry wound. It's a round, punched out defect with a abrasion on the lower left side of it, with no soot or stippling present.
Okay. Where does it travel within the body?
It travels from left to right, front to back, and upward.
Okay. Describe this wound to the jury.
It's another classic entry wound, round, punched out defect with a margin of abrasion that you see. It's more towards her nose.
What was the direction and path of travel of the bullet in this particular case?
This one goes from left to right, front to back, and downward.
All right. And where does it go through? Does it go through any organs or anything like that?
Yeah, it perforates her left maxillary bone, and then it goes through her mouth, down through her neck, where it perforates the left carotid artery and the left jugular vein. It then perforates the 7th cervical vertebra, so right at the base of her neck, and then perforates the spinal cord at that level, and then embeds in it.
Okay. And again, as with the other wounds, was this a fatal wound?
Yes.
And was this wound as well immediately incapacitating?
Yes.
If you could look at that for me, tell me what the autopsy report says about the track of wound A, please.
It says that the wound path is directed from front to back, left to right, and slightly downward.
Okay, so do I assume the report's in error, or is your testimony today?
The report is in error. If you look at all the measurements of the entrances and exits, it makes a lot more sense. And we also have photographs of the probes that we use to signal directionality, but I doubt you guys would allow that to be shown.
We didn't show those.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't use those. All right. So wound A, then, the gunshot wound, is in fact slightly upward, not slightly downward, as Dr. McCowan documented in the autopsy report.
Yes, the wound path is slightly upward.
Okay. All right. And in fact, would you agree with me that when you gave your deposition to us, you testified the track was front to back, left to right, and slightly downward? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so you made a mistake in the deposition as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I think you've already said you cannot tell us anything about the position of the shooter, only tell us what you saw for that track.
Yeah, just the direction of the track through the body.
My name is Mykesha Romeo, MyCesha-Romeo.
All right, and just a reminder to keep your voice up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Ms. Romeo, if you can keep your voice up and speak into the microphone so we can hear you, okay?
Okay.
Ms. Romeo, where are you currently employed?
University of South Florida,
What do you do for the University of South Florida?
Director of Human Resources.
Do you know the defendant in this case, Jermaine Bass?
Yes.
How do you know him?
He was married to my sister-in-law,
Sister-in-law. Okay. And who's your sister-in-law?
Shirley Bass.
All right. So you are married to Shirley Bass's brother?
Yes.
And what is his name again?
Richard Romeo II.
Richard Romeo II. Okay. How long have you known Shirley Bass?
Altogether, since she was 3, but
Okay.
really since 2008.
All right. And you know Mr. Bass, Jermaine Bass? How long have you known him?
Since Shirley was about 16 or 17. I don't know the exact year.
Okay. So you knew them when they got together and first became a couple?
Yes.
All right. And did you get to know, or were you at times close to them in the family?
I wouldn't say close.
Okay. But you knew them and you knew the children?
Yes.
And you knew Jayla and Jermaine?
Yes.
And would you see them at family get-togethers?
Yes.
Going back to August of 2022, specifically the night of August 29th of 2022, the night this happened, did you see Shirley Bass that day?
Yes.
Where did you see her?
At the dinner at Ruth Chris.
What was this dinner about at Ruth's Chris?
It was my older sister-in-law's birthday,
Okay. And who is that?
Marlene Gadsden.
Okay. So Shirley Bass has an older sister,
Yes.
and her name is Marlene Gadsden.
Yes.
And she's got an older brother named Richard Romeo II.
Yes.
And is that this all her siblings?
She has another older brother, Prince Romeo.
Prince Romeo. Okay. Was he there?
No.
All right. What time? So this dinner was for Marlene. Who all went to this? Do you recall?
Marlene, Shirley, a friend of Marlene's, a friend from church, and I think another couple.
Okay. Was China Gadsden there?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. What about your husband? Was he there?
Yes.
Okay. What time did this dinner start?
I can't tell you for sure, maybe 7:30.
Okay. Was when Shirley Bass showed up, was Jermaine Bass with her?
No.
How was Shirley's behavior that night at the dinner?
It was fine.
Did anything seem out of the ordinary with her?
No.
Was she communicative and talkative and just hanging out with everybody the same way she always did?
Yes, I saw her smile.
Okay. Anything about that night that would give you any reason to believe something was going on in Shirley Bass's home?
No.
How long do you believe you all were at that dinner?
A couple of hours.
Were you there when Shirley left?
Yes.
And did you see who she left with?
I believe she left with China. They walked out at the same time. We were still waiting for our car.
Okay. And when she left, did everything appear normal with Shirley?
Yes.
Was it in fact a nice dinner that you all had that night?
Yes.
You all took pictures?
Yes.
Okay. When did you find out what happened after dinner that night?
The next morning.
Okay. What did you do when you found out?
Objection, relevance? Relevance.
Legitimate reproach?
Sure.
So when you found out, did you go to the hospital?
Yes.
All right. Were you able to see Jermaine Bass, JJ?
Yes.
At the hospital. What was his condition when you got there?
He was in critical condition.
Okay. Was he in fact in a coma?
Yes.
Tell me about so you knew JJ. I'm going to call him JJ just to make it clear that we're not talking about the defendant, right?
Sure.
Were you aware of JJ's relationship with Jayla?
Yes.
Did they have a very good relationship?
Yes.
Objection, relevance? Sustained.
Judge, may we approach on this?
No, I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead.
You're going to go ahead? Okay.
Yep.
Did they have a good relationship?
Yes.
Did you ever see them fighting?
No.
Did you ever see Jermaine angry at Jayla at any time? Or violent with her at any time?
No.
Okay. Now, since this occurrence, since this what happened on that night, have you followed up with JJ's care and know what's happening with JJ?
Yes.
Okay. How is JJ doing today?
He has some struggles, but he's recovered very well considering.
Okay. Is the bullet that was shot into him, is it still inside his head?
Yes.
They were not able to take it out?
No.
As a result of that, has that limited Jermaine's ability to do things in his day-to-day life?
Yes.
How so?
He has trouble with processing, and he has receptive and expressive language disorder. The left side of his face is paralyzed. His left ear was closed permanently because the back, I guess, from what I heard at the doctor's appointment.
Objection, hearsay? Let's see what you observed.
What I observed?
Or what you've observed in
What I've observed is his left ear is closed permanently.
Okay. And he can't hear out of that left ear?
Correct.
All right. As a result of this, is he not allowed to play like physical sports?
He cannot play tackle football.
Okay. Other than all that, though, he is still progressing and going through school normally and as any other child would.
He's below a little, but he's moving through.
How about his hand? How is his hand at this point?
His finger stopped growing. They fused it, and so it stopped growing. And so when he writes, he has to take often breaks. He writes like this so that he doesn't have to lay his finger on whatever surface he's writing on.
Okay, and you did this, when you just did this, for the record, you lifted up the pinky and you held the fingers and the thumb kind of together like you're holding something, but with the pinky still out.
Correct.
All right.
Because he has sensitivity issues.
And you did that with your right hand, so he's right-handed?
He's right-handed.
Okay.
That you all are not typically close is because your husband is kind of like the big brother, almost like a father figure to her?
Yes.
Okay. And she hangs out with China, right, sometimes?
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yes.
And China is related how?
She's Marlene's daughter.
Okay. So she is technically Shirley's niece, right?
Yes.
But are they in a closer age range?
I mean, closer than me and Shirley.
Okay. Closer than your husband and Shirley and you and Shirley, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm China Gadsden, China, and my last name Gadsden, Gadsden.
Do you know the defendant, Jermaine Bass?
Yes,
How do you know him?
through my aunt
Who's your aunt?
Shirley.
Okay. Are you and Shirley close?
Yes,
Okay. Are you all kind of almost in the same age, even though she's your aunt? You all are similar age range?
yeah, we're like 6 years apart.
Okay. And so you and your aunt would go out from time to time?
Yeah,
All right. Would you see the defendant from time to time?
yeah, like family events.
Okay. Do you know their children, Jayla and Jermaine?
Yes,
All right. Do you remember the night they were shot?
yes.
Where were you that night?
I was at home in my apartment.
Okay. Prior to being at home in your apartment, were you? Did you do anything else earlier in the evening?
Like that night we went out to Ruth Chris, a restaurant.
Ruth Chris, and that's over in the West Shore area, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did you get to Ruth Chris?
Well, my aunt Shirley, she picked me up and we drove there together
Okay. Where did she pick you up?
at my apartment
Where was your apartment back then?
on Bruce B. Downs, Lane Bears.
So you were relatively close to where she was living at the time as well?
Yes.
Okay. When she picked you up, was it just her?
Yes,
It was just the two of you in the car?
yeah, just the two of us.
All right, you did not see Jermaine?
No,
Okay. How was she when she picked you up?
she was normal.
Okay. Did you all go straight to the restaurant?
Yes,
You say her demeanor was normal. Did she appear upset, worried, anything like that?
no, not worried, not upset.
She just seemed her normal self.
Yeah, just normal.
Okay. How was the dinner?
It was fun.
Everyone got along?
Yes,
Was Jermaine at the dinner at all?
no,
Did you ever see him come into Ruth's Chris or any time inside at Ruth's Chris?
no.
Okay. Who all was there? Do you remember?
It was my mom and then.
And your
her-
mom is Marlene, correct?
Yes, Marlene. Her boyfriend, Tyson, my uncle and aunt, and then my other aunt, Shirley, and I don't know the other couple that came.
All right. What was Shirley's behavior like at dinner?
It was normal, like we all had a good time.
All right. Did anyone overdrink too much?
No,
All right. Do you recall how much Shirley might have had to drink?
we just had like one glass, and that was it.
Okay. When it came time when the dinner was over, what did you all do?
When the dinner was over, like we left and went home.
Okay. Shirley drove in her car. What kind of car did Shirley have?
The white Mercedes Benz.
Okay. Now you said she drove you there. Who left? Who drove back?
I drove back
Why did you drive back?
because that was like a normal thing for us to do. Like if I wanted to drive, she was okay with that.
Okay.
Like we carpooled together.
All right. It wasn't any particular reason. It wasn't because she was drinking too much or anything like that.
No.
All right. Now you just wanted to drive back.
Yeah.
All right. As you were leaving Ruth's Chris, did anything unusual happen after you left?
Yes.
What was that?
It was when we saw her like husband get out the car, like on the entryway.
Okay, prior to him getting out of the car, you were driving. Did you notice anything about any driver behind you?
Yeah. Like oh yeah, when we first left the restaurant, like
Yes.
there was the white truck like tailgating us.
Okay, when you said tailgating, Meaning he was very close to you? The truck
Yeah.
was very close to you? Did it concern you?
Yeah, because I didn't know who that was.
Did it feel aggressive?
Yes.
Objection, speculation, overruled.
I'm sorry, you can answer that. Did it feel aggressive?
Yes.
Okay. And as the car was tailgating you, what did you do? Were you getting concerned?
Yes, I was like, what was that? Like, who was that behind us? And I just thought it was like some crazy random guy because I wasn't sure at the time until like I saw him get out the car.
Okay, so you didn't recognize his car at that point?
No.
Okay. And you said, so you left Bruce Chris, so you would, to get on the interstate, you would turn right and head down towards the interstate?
Yes.
And that's when the car was following you in that manner?
Yes.
All right. And then as you turn onto the entrance ramp onto the interstate, what happened?
Like we were like a distance or like about 2.5 cars, but it was like no cars in front of us. And then I stopped to like keep my distance because I wasn't sure what was going on. Like he stopped traffic and then got out the car and went over to my side because he probably thought she was driving, but it was me. And
Okay,
he
wait,
asked,
let's slow down a second, okay?
Yeah.
So he was tailgating you, you pull onto that entrance ramp. How does he get in front of you? What happens?
he like goes in front of us, like around us, and then stops, like, because it was only one lane to get up the entrance ramp.
Okay. And so he goes around you all and stops the truck.
Correct.
And you said you didn't get too close.
Yes.
Because at that time, did you know who was in that truck?
No.
Okay. And what did you see happen after you stopped the car, the Mercedes, and who got out of that truck?
It was Jermaine.
Okay. And what did Jermaine do when he got out of that truck?
He went to the car, like the driver's side, which was my side, and he was asking like a few questions to her.
Okay. And do you recall what he said to her?
Yeah, he just asked like, was she drunk and why does she have me driving?
Okay. And how did Shirley react to that?
Like she just like brushed it off, I guess. Like,
Okay. Did she seem upset by it or anything?
No.
Okay. What did he do after asking those particular questions, like, was she drunk while you're driving? What happened then?
Like I guess he just went back to his car and it was like that was it. It happened really fast.
Okay, and then did he drive away from that point on?
Yes.
All right. And what did you do at that point?
I just kept driving and I was like, whoa, like that was crazy.
You said that was crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. That was not typical, right?
No.
Okay. Did you drive back to your house at that point?
Yes.
How was Shirley on the drive back?
She was normal. Like,
Okay. And she dropped you off?
yes.
Okay, and then she left, and I guess you assumed she went home, correct?
Correct.
All right. When did you hear about what happened with Jayla and Jermaine?
The next morning, like around 8.
Okay.
If she had been drinking and kind of why isn't she driving her own car, right?
Yes, exactly.
Do you ever see any kind of weapon?
No.
Does Shirley answer him?
I don't remember.
Okay, you described it as Shirley just kind of brushes it off.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to his truck and he drives off?
Yes.
Do you ever see the truck again?
Like later in the years, yeah.
Okay, but not that night?
Yeah, not that night.
Okay, no other contact with Jermaine that night?
No.
Was anyone trying to get by you guys when this is happening?
No, they like all stopped.
Everybody stops?
Yeah, like all the cars that was behind us.
Okay, is anyone honking?
No.
Yelling, getting mad that you all are stopping this traffic going on to 275?
No, it's like everyone seen it happen. Like how he went around us.
Okay.
Aggressively.
And you said that Shirley didn't seem upset by any of that.
No.
When you start to drive, you get to your apartment, right?
Yes.
Does Shirley stay with you?
No, like she goes home after. She drops me off.
Okay, so she wasn't worried about going home.
No.
And you say later the next morning is when you hear about anything happening with the children.
Yeah.
Okay. you don't talk to detectives, law enforcement, until over a year later when they interview you. Is that right?
Yes.
It wasn't until October of 2023 that you finally speak to them.
Yes.